The unemployment rate is at 38%, according to John Williams of Shadow Stats. The debt to GDP rose so fast the past month from 119% to 125%. Companies continue to make layoff announcements, and more are to come. The market has been rigged. The Treasury, the Fed, and the Wall Street elites are all in it together. Income inequality is going to lead to a revolution. Anyone that was hoping for a quick recovery for the US economy can forget about that right now. Debt keeps going up, we are on a treadmill to oblivion. There is no exit strategy and will end badly. Debt matters. Millions of small businesses are not going to be able to survive in such a depressed economic environment for very long. Around the country, governors can choose to end the lockdowns, but they can't order customers to go out and spend money. And considering the fact that more than 40 million Americans have lost their jobs over the last 6 weeks, a lot of them don't have money to spend anyway. Meanwhile, the cost of living is actually going up. Thanks to the ongoing meat shortages, fresh meat prices are escalating quite rapidly. We really are caught in a downward spiral now. We never really fully recovered from the Great Recession. The manufacturing production is still 5% shy from its pre-recession peak. The construction sector down 20% from its pre-recession high. Just because we have muddled along putting band-aids on our economy does not mean that we have accomplished a great deal. The Trump economy has been a continuation of deficit spending. We have postponed the day of reckoning but most likely made it far worse. The economic collapse that we have been warning about is here, and it is going to continue whether there are lockdowns or not. The destruction of small businesses is a feature, not a bug. One more mechanism of wealth transfer to the politically connected. The governors and the Fed allowed the big-name box stores like Walmart and Home Depot to stay open while using executive orders to shut down their small business competitors. This is what happens when control-freak totalitarians, who never miss a day's pay, put you out of business. Heck. They don't seem to mind letting the big stores open but crush everyone else. It's obscene. It's evil. The New World Order cartel globalist intends to wipe out the entire middle class by year's end. COVID 2.0, Lockdown 4.0, force civil disobedience and bloodshed, roll out a heavy-handed military response, collapse the global economy, what's left of our government, tanks in the streets and shoot to kill all who do not bow. Patriots slandered, scapegoated, and outlawed. Everything in the geopolitical spectrum is racing toward the New World Order. One world governance agenda. Goodbye, America. Hello, Amerizuela. From roaring 20s to whispering 20s, it took 100 years, but the rulers got us. From Elvis to COVID and on to Brave New World, 1984 was a great year. The next Davos meeting in January 2021 is themed The Great Reset. It will have far fewer attendees and be virtual as well, almost as if they knew travel and face-to-face interaction would be tricky. The 2021 World Economic Forum Summit will be held both in person and online and will focus on reducing humans' impact on the planet and how to move past the pandemic. The theme marks the urgent need for change in the global economy. Founder Klaus Schwab said, "A great reset is needed," and insisted the meeting could build a new social contract that honors the dignity of every human being. He added, "The global health crisis has laid bare the unsustainability of our old system in terms of social cohesion, the lack of equal opportunities and inclusiveness. Nor can we turn our backs on the evils of racism and discrimination. Ah yes, the elite and their wonderful ability to reset the planet for us but not them." Klaus Schwab, a Bilderberger and Trilateral Commission member, is not someone who is really concerned with the dignity of the human race. He appears very interested in power and money and self-aggrandizement within a small group of people only, as he, like most of the so-called elite, publicity shy. He knows, and they know best, even though their banks and corporations are responsible for most of the ills we experience on planet Earth today. They'll tell you it's about making a better society, but really it's about resetting the broken financial system. The Fed is no longer able to kick the can down the road as it is meeting a wall. John Williams says the economy will bottom in early to mid-2021. And it is going to be like a 90% reduction by then. The system is bankrupt, and they're just spending money to try to prevent an immediate collapse. As long as the statistics can be faked, we can have a fake V-shaped recovery. Buy up stocks and bonds with free money from the Federal Reserve. Fake BLS employment reports, etc. We should have lots of celebrations during the month of July, only to find around late July and early August corporate financial reports showing just how fake the stock market and government figures actually are. Remember, numbers don't lie though, people do. We are only in the early stages of this planned world economic and government finance collapse. But, don't worry, the central and international banks are in complete control of everything called financial. And the introduction of a new, one world currency, which will replace the US dollar as the world reserve currency, is right around the corner. Perhaps in 2 years' time after they complete their COVID agenda of the destruction of the world economy and world government finances. Everything was well planned ahead of the release of their COVID scapegoat. But right now, they need governments to go even deeper into debt before that secret fraternity of elites at the very top gives their Federal Reserve the order to pull it. As we watch the world markets collapse, unlimited currency has always historically resulted in inflation. I believe our future to be inflation, hyperinflation, economic collapse, and World War III. The only thing saving us now is that the dollar is the reserve currency, but for how much longer? Once that passes, we will quickly be like Venezuela. Banks create money out of thin air and then charge interest on it. The only thing keeping this system going is faith in the dollar. Welcome back to the Atlantis Report. You are here for your daily dose of the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. More than 40 million Americans are out of work as entire industries have frozen during the coronavirus pandemic. The unemployment rate has skyrocketed to its highest level since the Great Depression. But this so-called 100% fake, contrived stock market can and will probably go much, much higher. The stock market is a casino where the house always wins. It's called a Ponzi scheme, you just have to convince people it's a sound investment, whether it is or not. The market looks good, but the internal reality is not. The US dollar is collapsing. Manipulating the markets is illegal, except when it is the Federal Reserve doing it, then that's completely fine. Stock market indexes are a national security concern. They must be kept elevated at all costs. If stocks drop too far, bad things happen, pensions go bust, insurance companies teeter on the verge of bankruptcy, 401k holders still working for a living get grumpy and disillusioned, retirees who have been forced out of safe bonds, treasuries and into higher returning stocks get hosed even worse than before. Let the stock market drop too far, and the granddads and grannies will be out rioting with the youngsters who are already totally screwed, and those old farts won't be throwing bricks, they'll be throwing lead. It's all going to come to that at some point anyway, but not until the people running the show are ready to take them on. It could be next week, could be next year, who knows? But it's coming. The market is like the coronavirus. Very poorly, slight improvements. Feeling healthy and suddenly on a ventilator fighting for air, life. The Fed pumping all sorts of remedies, therapeutics. Prepare the body bag. Once that secret fraternity of elites at the very top gives the order to start hitting the sell buttons instead of the buy buttons, the next step of their coronavirus plan will be completed. The final stop of their COVID-19 plans will be when the US dollar is replaced by their long-desired, one world international currency. And all other currencies will be rendered useless. Then it will be mission accomplished. This is the only explanation I can give about this intentionally released COVID agenda. They need this one world currency, which is part of this new world order of an eventual one world government, one world economy, one world banking system, and a one world currency, owned and controlled by the IMF. A complete takeover of this world by way of the financial system. And no one can stop them, because even if we knew who they were, they are untouchable. There are two separate worlds. One is a real day-to-day life. Wall Street is an eternal casino. Such is the sad state of affairs in the current version of Rome, 475 AD. The real question to be asking yourselves is not which stocks should I own, but rather, what is my survival plan? The higher they drive stocks up with free money from the Federal Reserve, the more damage they will produce when the order is given to pull the plug on everything called financial, including the stock markets. And even the government has joined in on the act with their fake BLS employment numbers. I remember the old days when just the news was called fake. Now our entire economy and even government statistics are carrying that label. This just goes to show how well coordinated this takeover of the world of money by this international banking system is. We can ignore reality, but we cannot ignore the consequences of ignoring reality. Ayn Rand. I guess hyperinflation it is then. I knew all that pasta, spam, and toilet paper I overbought for the pandemic would be a good investment someday. Buy storable goods while you can with the gift of the credit card. Take advantage of all sales and coupons, as it is better to be 6 months early than a day late. The Federal Reserve is largely responsible for the mess that this nation is in. The U.S. Federal Reserve now has a 0% reserve requirement, meaning, they should no longer be called a reserve bank. They are going to negative rates and not wanting to penalize retail banks or deposit-taking institutions for holding reserves. They will eliminate retail banks, only investment and commercial banks left. Eliminates the repo market as they no longer have to raise money to meet reserve requirements at day's end. The banksters and corporate parasites are the roots of all the evil in the West. Centralization of credit in the hands of the state is the fifth plank of the Communist Manifesto. The Fed is the globalist bankster oligarchs collection agency, and its sole purpose is to strip mine the wealth of America until only an elite wealthy corporate class, and an impoverished needy serf class exists. The privately owned banking cartel known as the Federal Reserve was brought into existence in the dark of night by corrupt globalist banksters from England along with equally corrupt U.S. Anglophile politicians for the sole purpose of strip mining the wealth of America and depositing it into the hands of the 1% ultra-wealthy banking oligarchs in Europe. Madoff in jail at this point is a massive injustice. And about the same time, taxes started being implemented where they hadn't before. As with everything else, at first, they were voluntary but soon became mandatory. Increased taxation always ends up benefiting the very wealthy and creating more poverty for the already poor. It gives enormous power to the central government and creates further dependence on it. Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. The EU nations, which are more socialist than we are, for now, at least, are heavily taxed, and yet the EU is struggling economically. But the power that be always force us to copy them as much as possible. The Federal Reserve is one of the world banks, all of which are in the hands of the globalists. They have only their own interests at heart, regardless of which economic, political, or other ideology they tout. They'll use anything, idea, or person in their shell game to take resources and manpower for their own gain. The coming NWO evil system will have the full backing of the globalists, who will be more than happy to implement his mandates under the guise of peace and safety for all when in reality, it will be a way to control the world in a way more evil and all-encompassing than the world has ever seen. I'm not saying that some taxation isn't helpful. But where we've gone with it and where we're going with it, is not good. As the Social Security retirement may run out before I get to reclaim all that I have paid into the fund. George Carlin once said, "When you are born to this world, you get a free ticket to the freak show, and if you are born in America, you get a front seat. Welcome to the freak show that works for fewer and fewer people." Americans educated by Hollywood and television will never solve their real problems because most Americans don't know what their real problems are. Their minds have been mediated and their reality constructed by their enemies. This was the Atlantis Report. Please like, share, subscribe. And please take some time to subscribe to my backup channels, I do upload videos there too. You'll find the links in the description box. You will also find a PayPal link if you want to make a donation. Thank you wholeheartedly to all those of you who have already donated. Stay safe and healthy, friends.